What's wrong with Dracula? He's losing his monster power. So is Frankenstein. Quick, into the Monsterizer.
You can activate the Monsterizer, batteries not included, and imagine you're restoring monster power to Frankenstein. Figures sold separately. You crank him into the chamber. It closes automatically.
Activate the Monsterizer. I feel like a new monster.
The Monsterizer comes complete as shown. Frankenstein and Dracula figures are sold separately. New from Remco.
It's the battle of the mini-monsters. Introducing Frankenstein, Phantom of the Opera, Dracula, and creature from the Black Lagoon.
The monsters with glow-in-the-dark features.
Frankenstein is in a foul temper. Dracula flies in, fangs bared. Creature surfaces, dripping with rage. Phantom shows his fiendish face. I can't look. Is he ugly? The monster battle rages on. It's a howl.
The monsters with glow-in-the-dark features, each sold separately from Remco.
Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. This is the last episode of the 2023-2024 season. I'll do a live stream at some point over the summer. I usually do one in late June, so I'll probably do that. And I might come back with a special episode. I don't know. I don't have anything planned. But this is the last regular episode until the fall. I hope you've enjoyed the season. In our last episode, we covered Azrak Hamway International Super Monsters from the 1970s. And this is sort of a part 2, because now we're going to look at Remco Monsters. And Remco and Azrak Hamway were the same company at that point. But this is going to be a little different than that. I'm going to start off looking at the NECA tributes to the Remco Monsters. So that's a little different angle. I did cover the Remco Monsters in my second season. And I reviewed that episode, and I thought it held up pretty well. I kind of wonder, do I really even need to do another one? But I said I would do it, so here I am. And I think the main reason to do it would be just to make the video quality and audio quality consistent with all the other episodes I've been doing lately. But I thought as far as showcasing the toys and talking about the company and my feelings about the toys, I thought that episode did a pretty good job. And it's actually 3 episodes if you want to look for it. It's in the second season. 3 episodes. The first one deals with the 9-inch monsters, and then the second deals with the 3 3/4-inch monsters, and then the final one looks at the monsters at home. We're going to try to do all 3 of those in one episode, plus look at NECA toys. So how are we going to do that? I don't know. It sounds like this could be a long episode. Well, I guess enough preamble. We better dig in. Now, before I got some notes on Remco, but before I get to Remco, let's look at NECA. And this is something that makes this episode a little different from the previous one, from the second season, because we didn't have the NECA toys. And these are obviously not legitimate Remco toys, but I feel like it would be incomplete to talk about Remco toys and not get into these. And I haven't really covered these NECA figures comprehensively on the show, so this is an opportunity to do that. There's the NECA Remco tribute Frankenstein. This Frankenstein and the Mummy and the Wolfman were the first 3 that NECA put out a couple years ago. And they were sold at Target, other places, but you could easily get them at Target. Which has not been the case with some of the more recent figures in this series. And the card art mimics the 1980s Remco Mini Monster card art. But it's not exact. It's not exactly the same. And we'll see the originals very soon, later in this episode. And even the back tries to mimic the style of the back of that card art, that vintage card art. These are very heavy, and I wonder, well, maybe it's the cards. I've heard some people say it's really the cards that are heavy, but it feels like there's a lot of weight. And I keep wondering if these toys are just going to fall off. These bubbles are going to come loose. And I noticed that these first three, the bubbles are not affixed very strongly. It seems like they're just little spots where they're adhered to the card, whereas the later ones seem like they're more complete all the way around. Here's the Wolfman. Now, all of these toys, every single one of these, was originally issued as part of the NECA Universal Monsters Ultimate figure line. And they were painted in realistic color schemes, sold in boxes. And then NECA reissued them in this style to mimic the Remco Mini Monster glow figures. And if you hear anything in the background, that's Billy chirping and warbling. That's my cat, Billy. I don't know if you can hear him. And some people have expressed disappointment that they didn't re-sculpt these to look like the Remco sculpts. Like in the case of this Wolfman, you can see this mask right here that's based on the original Remco Mini Monster Wolfman. These figures are painted to resemble those original figures, but they're not sculpted to resemble those figures. They're sculpted as realistic representations of the actors and the characters. And that's how they were originally issued in their boxes as part of the Ultimate line, but then they were reissued in this retro version. NECA didn't use the same photographic process to create these black and white actor images. They didn't use the same process that Remco used. The process Remco used does look more, nuanced, more dynamic. It's more interesting, has more texture. But I have to say that this project from NECA gets a lot right. These things do have a nostalgic quality. I mean, looking at them, I do get a nostalgic kind of a feeling about, especially seeing them on peg hooks at Target. Seeing them in a retail store kind of reminds me of being a kid, seeing the originals on peg hooks. So these three were available at Target. And then NECA switched to an online mail order distribution system. Now, I think this was actually a convention exclusive, but you could get it online. I kind of like this glow creature. Maybe maybe a little more than the serious looking one in the box. For some reason the sculpt looks better this way. I don't know, this color scheme brings out the sculpt and the shape a little better. And I like those red lips. This is a very substantial figure. I mean, it's bigger than most of these. It's heavier. It just has a lot of mass and a lot of weight. Now, I think my brother saw these first three at Target and took a picture of them and texted me the picture because he's not a toy collector, so he didn't know that I already knew about them. But he was excited to see them. He thought I'd be excited, and it was cool to get the text. But obviously there's a non-collector that had a reaction seeing these at a store, thinking it was cool just to see these things from our childhood on a store shelf. Now, I don't remember if Dracula or Phantom was the last to come out. I think Phantom was the last one to come out. Here's Dracula. So with Creature was a convention exclusive, but you could get it online. Dracula and Phantom, you had to order them through the NECA website. So these were never in stores, at least so far. And this Dracula is a little different from the rest in that the card art is not the same photo used on the Remco cards, the original Remco cards, and it's licensed through Lugosi Enterprises. Even though it doesn't really look like Bela Lugosi. It kind of does. I don't know if this is the same sculpt used on the Ultimate figure, which does look like Lugosi, but with this paint, I don't know if they changed this, did a new head sculpt for this or used the same one, but with this paint, it obviously deliberately has a cartoony kind of look, but it still looks like Lugosi. Yeah, that's Lugosi. This weird cape is supposed to mimic the one on the original. I think they could have done a better job getting that right. That vinyl cape, as we'll see when we look at the originals. That's not the way the cape looked on the original. And it does look a little weird. I like the Ultimate figure line from NECA, the Universal Ultimate figure line. But I don't know, I might like these Remco ones a little more because they're fun. I like the idea that monster toys can be fun. They don't have to be so serious and adult-oriented. But clearly these are adult-oriented. They're for adult collectors who... Most of all, the ones that were kids when these original figures were new and remember them and have a nostalgic reaction to them. Here's the Phantom. I think this was the last one to come out. And with these later ones, they started doing this distressed look. And I remember when I got these in the mail, I thought they were damaged. I took a closer look. No, they're deliberately adding that distressed look to the artwork that's printed on like that. This isn't wear, it's printed that way. I don't know why they did that. Because the first three, Frankenstein, Mummy, Wolfman, they're not like that. They don't have that. Another nice thing about this series is compared to the serious looking ones in the boxes. You can hardly see those figures in the boxes, those window boxes. They don't display the figure very well. But with these bubble cards, you can really see the figure. The boxes, it's kind of dark in there. And I don't know, I haven't done an episode on those boxed figures because you just can't see them on camera. You can barely see them with the naked eye. But with these, you can see different angles. You can get a really good look at them and see exactly what they look like. And again, that back is supposed to mimic the way the original Remco cards looked. It's not exact, but I mean, it's in the ballpark. Seeing them all together is really nice. I mean, they do look impressive as a set. They might look more impressive as a set than they do individually. It's a fun project. I'm glad NECA did it. I wouldn't want NECA to keep doing more and more and more and more variants. They did a series based on the Burger King fast food toys, and I didn't buy those. I didn't even try to buy those. It was a little harder to get them in the first place. You couldn't just I didn't try to order them, so I don't know the whole story, but I read feedback from other people who were collecting them that it was a little frustrating. It wasn't easy to get them. It wasn't difficult to get these as long as you were on top of it and you knew when they became available on the NECA site. Even the creature being a convention exclusive, it wasn't really difficult to get him. So they were all... I didn't really have a hard time getting any of these. Now the bubbles on the creature and the Phantom and the Dracula seem like they're more firmly affixed to the card and more thoroughly adhered all the way around. Whereas the Frankenstein, the Mummy, and the Wolfman, it seems like whether it's heat or glue or a combination, whatever they're applying to that bubble to stick it to the card, it seems kind of spotty here and there. It's not complete all the way around. So I wouldn't be surprised if these bubbles fall off someday. At least these first three. I think the second three might be more durable and might last a little longer on the cards. And the cards really are half the reason to buy these. This card art is what makes them so much fun to look at. Off the card, they lose something. Now, here's the final piece, at least so far, in this set. This is a Monsterizer. Now, Remco made two Monsterizers back in the day. One for their 9-inch Remco monsters and one for their 3 3/4-inch mini monsters. And this one is based on the Monsterizer for the 9-inch figures, even though the rest of this set is harkening back to the 3 3/4-inch figures. So they made a 9-inch figure Monsterizer to go with the 3 3/4-inch retro figures. But I mean, I understand why they did that. Because even though the figures are based on the look of those little ones from the past, they're not little. They're the size of the 9-inch ones. Well, anyway, it's a little bit of a mismatch. I've never owned a vintage Monsterizer. I do like the look of the 9-inch figure Monsterizer more than the mini Monsterizer. And in fact, I'm not sure that I've ever actually held the mini Monsterizer in my hand. I don't know that I have. I've seen the big one up close. In fact, I had one as a kid in the house for a few months, like over the summer, one of the neighbor kids left it here pretty much over the summer, so I was able to play with it quite a bit until they finally collected and took it back home. So I had one up close for a while. But as a collector, I've never bought a Monsterizer, the big one or the small one. Now, because I keep things mint in box, I'm not going to open this one. However, a very helpful, generous collector named Stephen Latta has provided this video of his NECA Monsterizer. I don't think it makes any sounds. It doesn't have any buzzing sound or electrical sound, but it has a lot of cool lights, lighting effects. The big electrodes light up. They don't glow in the dark like the original one did. This NECA Monsterizer seems like it does a lot more than the Remco one did. It seems like it has more functions. It's fancier. The design is a little more realistic. It's a little more serious. The Remco one was a little more cartoony, basic, and more toy-like. It was a toy. This NECA one is not really a toy. It's for adult collectors. And as with the original Monsterizer, the idea is that you would put these into the Monsterizer. The reason it's called a Monsterizer, it charges them with light, because all of these glow in the dark. And the original, well, we'll get into that, but the original 9-inch series all had glow-in-the-dark features, and the original 3 3/4-inch figures had a glow-in-the-dark series, which these are based on. So in both cases, the Monsterizer, the monsterizing action was emitting light that charged the glow feature, so when you turn the lights off, it glowed. And the NECA one does the same thing. It applies light to these figures that glow in the dark, and so when you turn the lights off, then they'll glow. So that's the monsterization that's going on with the Monsterizers. So thank you again, Stephen, for supplying that video. I appreciate it. It's kind of boring just to look at a box and not see the toy, but I don't open boxes. I'm not going to open this box. As far as I know, that is the final piece in this NECA Retro Remco set, and they don't call it Remco. And when they've been interviewed, like at some videos at toy trade shows, they go to the NECA booth and they talk about the Remco series, and the people at the booth say, well, you know, we don't say that, but kind of winky wink, we know, of course, that's what they are. They're based on Remco toys. The original Remco set had these 6 characters in the Monsterizer, and a play case too. And I think I heard that NECA was considering a play case. I hope they don't add any more figures to this, because in their Universal Monster serious, realistic line in the boxes, they've got a Bride of Frankenstein and an Invisible Man, and I forgot what other ones they have. And they're branching out to non-universal characters like Nosferatu and London After Midnight. I really don't want to see them added to this line. I think that keeping it limited to just what Remco made is what makes this special. I think you dilute it if you start adding characters that Remco didn't make. Then it loses the concept. So if they really want to make the play case, I don't know, okay. But I would hope they stop there and they don't add additional characters to this. I wouldn't want to see that. I want it to stay representing what Remco did. There's the NECA Remco project, and it's cool. I don't want them to do umpteen different color variants like what Super 7 has been doing with their toys. I don't want to see rainbow colored monsters and solar powered monsters and mood ring monsters that change colors and heaven knows what gold plated monsters. I don't want to see that. And I don't think they're going to do that. But so far they've got the regular figures, color, black and white. They've got these Remco style figures, and they've got the Burger King series, which is only Frankenstein, Dracula, Creature, and Wolfman, just 4 figures. I hope they stop there and don't let it get out of hand with just endless variants that don't make any sense, that end up just being a cash grab, just trying to get collectors to just buy the same figures again and again and again and again. I don't like that. But I do like this idea in this project, and I think it's fun, and it is nostalgic, and, you know, I'm happy to have these 6 figures and this Monsterizer, and if they do the play case, okay, I'll buy that just for the sake of completeness, and I hope they stop there. Well, let's now, after this little intro from the 21st century, let's go to the main attraction and talk about the real Remco monsters. We'll start with the 9-inch figures. Chronologically, they came first, and we'll go through the large figures and then the little mini monsters, which these are based on, and then the monsters at home. So let's get at our I Ching and transport ourselves to the land of vintage Remco monsters. Here we go. All of the NECA stuff is gone. We've cleared it away. Now we can just talk about vintage, real Remco monsters. Let's get these out. So these are my childhood Remcos. And as I explained in that video from the 2nd season, this Frankenstein was my brother's. He really loved that Frankenstein. So my brother always played with this Frankenstein. And he also had a Dracula, which I'll talk about. This Wolfman was mine. Obviously still is mine. That's my childhood Wolfman. Still has his original yarn. I think that's his original yarn. Could be replacement, but I think that's original. Looks very, very Lon Chaney. Still in pretty good shape. Here's my childhood mummy. A very nice Boris Karloff likeness, actually. And the paint kind of obscures it, but that's Karloff. I owned the Mummy and the Wolfman, and my brother owned the Frankenstein and the Dracula. Now I still have the Dracula, but he's in pieces. As I explained in the previous video, because Dracula is evil, my brother and I destroyed him. We cut his head in half this way, and that didn't kill him, so we cut it completely off. And that didn't kill him because we just glued the head back together with super glue and then painted with a red magic marker blood all where he had been split apart, but then he was back to life again. So then we took, I think it was a nail or something, we actually drilled a hole through his chest, his plastic chest, and then we took a real wooden stake made of wood and we pounded it through that hole. So he had a real wooden stake sticking through his chest and his costume. And then we, with the same magic marker, painted his chest area all red where the stake was going through, and then we painted his costume all red where his white tuxedo, we painted that red and had the stake sticking through that. And said, okay, now he's dead. But no, Dracula pulled that stake out somehow and he came back to life again. So we thought we got to destroy him for good this time. So we cut his arms off. And I think his legs just fell apart just from the general abuse. But we actually cut his arms. So now he's armless, like Blood for Dracula at the end of that movie, when Dracula has his arms and legs chopped off. And that seemed to finally kill him for good. He didn't come back. We chopping his limbs off. And then I think we probably staked him again, just to be sure. Then he was dead. So I still have this pile of Dracula parts, all colored red with magic marker. This mess of a toy. We still have that. Oh, I think we chopped his, I think his ankle broke on its own. We didn't chop it off. I think it broke on its own. But that just added to the damage. So we had this mangled Dracula, these pieces of Dracula all messed up and colored red. And finally, I think he was laid to rest. He didn't come back anymore, but he was a stubborn vampire. He kept coming back to life again and again, no matter how hard we tried to kill him. He would just come back and come back and come back. That's how Dracula is. So that's why I don't have the Dracula here, because we decimated that Dracula. We destroyed that toy. We took much better care of these toys, though, because they were not evil like Dracula. In fact, all of these toys, all three of these were essentially good guys in our games. None of them were evil. They were all sweet monsters. Dracula was always trying to manipulate Frankie and get him to do bad things. So, because he's evil, Dracula's evil. So he was always taking advantage of Frankie's simple mind. And Wolfman was just trying to tear everyone apart, but only the bad people. And Mummy just wanted to sleep. That's all. He was just a lazy mummy. He just wanted to sleep all the time. Don't bother me, I'm sleeping. He didn't like being bothered, woken up. And when he woke up, he was just kind of, I don't think he made a sound. He just kind of walked around and wanted to go back to sleep. So these three were not really very threatening. Wolfman could be, but the other ones were not very threatening. Frankenstein had super duper power, like Hulk level power. He was super strong in our games. And I had the Mego Hulk, and sometimes they would fight. Also had the Mego Ben Grimm, and he might fight Frankenstein. So the two really strong characters would get into fights with Frankenstein. But it wasn't vicious fights. It was harmless fights, just horseplay. They weren't really fighting. Not for real. But Dracula, though, he was playing for keeps. Dracula wanted to destroy everybody, so we destroyed him. And I remember the snap was always coming. When I played with him as a kid, I just left that undone because it was so tight. The costume really is too tight around his neck that it's hard to get that snap to stay. I mean, it's stayed in place for years now, obviously, but when we were playing with him, it was hard to get it to stay because it was just so tight. The neck opening really needed to be bigger. It just barely fit around the neck. So we usually just left that undone. Didn't want to strangle poor Mummy. let's talk about these toys. Yeah, I've got plenty of plastic bags here for all you plastic bag lovers and plastic bag haters. Now this series, everyone always says it came out in 1980, and I'm going to say it came out in 1980, but I always know as soon as I say that, someone will say, well, actually, no, it was only copyrighted in 1980, but it actually didn't come out until the following year. Well, okay, whatever. It's 1980. This is a 1980 series. There's I guess the flagship of the line is that Frankenstein. So that is a vintage, original, boxed Remco Frankenstein. And they came with these glow-in-the-dark rings. A cool little feature. They also had a patch. I think it's an iron-on patch. So each one had a patch and a ring. And I'll show you more of him in a minute. The Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy had individualized patches for each character. Phantom and Creature had one of those other 4 characters. There, as far as I know, Remco never made a Phantom patch or a Creature patch. The first series consisted of Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, and the Monsterizer. Here's a picture of the Monsterizer on the back. That's the original Monsterizer for the 9-inch figures. And those electrodes, those 4 electrodes, those tall things sticking up on all 4 ends, those glow in the dark, but they don't light up like the NECA one. On the NECA toy, they light up. But it's very similar to the NECA toy. The NECA was very faithful to the design of this original Monsterizer. They just added a few bells and whistles, made it a little fancier. And I've never owned a Monsterizer. In the months leading up to shooting this, over the course of the winter and spring, knowing I was going to do an episode like this, I've been shopping on eBay for a Monsterizer. And I just haven't found one that I thought was in good enough condition for a price I could live with. The prices are too high and the condition is too poor. So I did not acquire one in time for this video. I tried. But over the years, I just have not been able to bring myself to spend close to $1,000 for a lab table. And really the only reason I would buy one is to complete the set, to have everything in this series. If Remco had never made these toys and they just made that lab table to use with whatever, your Mego or Azrai Canway monster figures, I don't know that I would want to own it if it was just that lab table. It's because of the context of the lab table being the accessory, the playset for this line, that I'd want to own it. But in and of itself, it's not on its own, it's not a fantastic toy. I do like the one for the big figures a lot more than the one for those small figures. And I don't think I even have a picture of the one for the small figures. Well, one of these days, I'll own a Monsterizer, an original Monsterizer, because I feel like I should. I've got a nice set, these big figures. I should have the Monsterizer to go with these figures. But I don't have one to show you in this episode, unfortunately. So let's talk a little bit about Remco. Good old Remco. All right. It was founded in 1949 by Isaac Heller and Saul Robbins. If I'm pronouncing those names correctly. Its original headquarters was located in New Jersey. It did move around a little bit, but I think it was always in New Jersey, different locations in New Jersey. The name Remco is a combination of remote and control. The REM, R-E-M from remote, and the CO from control. And the reason they decided to name their company after remote control was because some of their early products were remote control toys, particularly vehicles. They made walkie-talkies, crystal radios, motorized toys, vehicles, not just like cars, but also flying kind of vehicles too. And apparently in the early days, they specialized in remote control toys because that's what they named the company after. They named the company after their remote control line. Remco really took off in the 1960s when they started getting into licensed products. They had a lot of high-profile licenses: Star Trek, the Monsters, Lost in Space, the Beatles, Batman. And it wasn't all the same kind of toy. All these different licenses had different kinds of toys. Some had figures, some had accessories that you could wear, guns, some had vehicles. Lost in Space had the robot, had a big remote control robot. One of my favorite 60s Remco products was the Hamilton's Invaders set. And I used to collect those. And I used to have a big boxed set and some of the smaller bug monsters, but that was an imaginative set. And I go into it in more detail in that previous video. But it's almost like Starship Troopers, giant bug monsters and army men and futuristic military vehicles. It's a cool set, and as far as I know, it's not a licensed property. That Remco made that up. It's their own property. I'm surprised no one's taken that and ran with it, made a movie or something. Hamilton's Invaders. Horrible Hamilton was the big bug that led the invaders. It seems like that's ripe for the picking, that someone could make a movie or a TV show or a cartoon or something based on that and reintroduce those toys. Someone with more resources than I have. Heller and Robbins, the founders, sold Remco in 1966, which is strange because that's just as all this licensed stuff was really going into high gear. Remco filed for bankruptcy in 1971. Then Azrak Hamway International purchased Remco in 1974. Azrak Hamway obviously is the company that made the Super Monsters. Here's our good buddy, the Creature, that we always show. Wouldn't be a Basement of Horror episode without him. That's an Azrak Hamway International toy. And we did, obviously the previous episode was all about the Super Monsters, Azrak Hamway International Super Monsters. Azrak Hamway purchased Remco, and then we had a whole new era of Remco toys, like the energized superheroes, energized Spider-Man, Green Goblin, other characters. They made a Batcopter, they made a Star Trek Enterprise, and they made this line of big and small monster toys, Universal Monsters. And then in the 80s, they made a lot of Masters of the Universe knockoff figures. Toys that were obviously styled to cash in on the Masters of the Universe popularity, but they were knockoffs, like the Warrior Beasts, Pirates of the Galaxies, stuff like that. They made a Conan line, ninjas, pirates, karate. They made the Karate Kid, actually. I didn't know Remco made... I knew there was a Karate Kid line. I didn't know Remco made it. And one of their big innovations in the 80s was the introduction of wrestling toys. Apparently Remco was the innovator in making professional wrestling-based figures. They were, I guess, first out of the gate making those kinds of toys. In 1997, quite a jump, 1997, Jakks Pacific purchased Remco, and as far as I know, Jakks Pacific still owns Remco. I noticed that there is an official Remco online with a company history, and kind of vague notions about what they might be doing with that brand. They are introducing some new wrestling toys this year, 2024. I don't know if they're affiliated with Jakks. It does mention on the site that Jakks Pacific purchased Remco, and then they didn't do anything with the brand for years and years and years. And I don't know if this new iteration of Remco is affiliated with Jakks or if it's something else. Don't know. But there is some activity with the Remco name right now. They are perhaps coming back to life. We'll see. Now, when these toys came out, these big monster toys, of course I grew up with the Azrac Hamway Super Monsters as a little kid. I had all those. And there wasn't another licensed Universal Monsters toy line for several years. There were the Tomlin figures and the Lincoln figures, but they were not Universal. They were not licensed. So when these came out, it was a big deal. It was the first time we had licensed official Universal Monsters action figures, posable action figures, since the Azrac Hamway line. And I remember as a kid being excited about that. Whereas the Azrac Hamway figures were smaller and they were rack toys and they were basically Mego knockoffs, these were more like Big Jim figures. I think that if they were meant to be compatible with anything, it would have been Big Jim. But I don't know if Big Jim was still in production at this time. But they look like Big Jim figures. They look like you could play with them alongside Big Jim as far as the scale and the construction. These are big, brawny, instead of the more gothic-looking Azrac Hamway figures. These are muscular, big-chested, thick necks, and they look like they're going to beat you up. They look like tough monsters, action-oriented monsters. So I don't know what the thinking was as far as what toys you would use to play with these. I think the way they're marketing it, really, they just want you to play with the monsters amongst themselves. Have little monster adventures. That's what it looks like here. And over here you see Frankenstein and the Wolfman getting into a tussle. They've got this monster hug action. You press a button on their back and their arms close, like folding across their chest, basically. And they glow in the dark. I like the whimsical way they present these, like Frankenstein. He's going for a walk. He meets Wolfman, gives him a monster hug, and then he has to rest for a while. He's had a hard day. And here they're having a little mad monster tea party. I think poor Frankie, well, maybe he's enjoying this. I don't know. It looks like he might be getting the short end of the stick in all this. I don't know. Or perhaps it's refreshing for him. There's the enthusiastic children. They're really excited to play with their monster toys. There's the original price sticker. A lot of these boxes have the original tape, but I think the seal is probably broken on most of these. But the contents are untouched, never played with, perfectly mint. And at least with the ones where I could look inside, they all have their complete contents, the patch, the ring, and there's some kind of instruction sheet as well. I don't remember if there's like a warranty card or something like that, but there is an instruction sheet because these are so complicated to operate. So there's some goodies that are included inside, and if you want to make sure you've got a complete one, you got to make sure they're all in there. Let's look at this copyrighted information again. 1980, Universal City Studios, Inc. Universal Monsters is a trademark of and licensed by Universal Studios. Remco, 1980, made in Hong Kong. And that's interesting that they are marketing it as Universal Monsters. And that hugging action, they're calling it Monster Crush. No batteries needed. And they call Frankenstein the Frankenstein monster. They don't just call him Frankenstein. He's the Frankenstein monster. They make that distinction. It doesn't actually say Universal Monsters. This is Universal Studios Frankenstein. I think the first time Universal Monsters was used in merchandising was on the Ben Cooper blue monster boxes. Some of them say Universal Monsters. I think most of them just say Monster, but some of them have the word Universal at the top. Very simple, beautiful design. Some people think it's too minimal. I think it's just perfect for the style of toy that this is. It's actually kind of genius. On these toys, I really like this minimal design. And extraordinary box art, beautiful painting. Just the whole package is fantastic. Everything about it is great. And I can see why these things are becoming more and more popular lately. Just the Remco monsters in general, big or small. When I started collecting, they really weren't that big a deal. The Phantom and the Creature, okay, those were big. But the little ones, even on cards, they were cheap. And the boxed ones like these, like Frankenstein, Wolfman, Dracula, Mummy, they were very inexpensive. There wasn't a lot of buzz about them. And maybe it just had to wait for a certain generation to grow up and reach a certain age. Because these are a bit later than the 70s. They're definitely later than the 60s monster stuff, for sure. But they're even later than the 70s monster stuff. That 1974-ish era when the Azrak Hamway toys were out and the Mego monsters and then the Lincoln monsters a year or two after that. These came along a little bit later. So it's a little... It could be a little different generation. I mean, I played with all of that. I was just the right age to hit the whole thing all through the 70s. But I can imagine there, depending on when you were born, that maybe the Mego Azrak Hamway era was your era and you're too old for these, or maybe you were too young or not born yet for the earlier ones, and these are your sweet spot. But in any case, these Remco monsters have really taken off in recent years in popularity, whereas I think they were a little soft in the past as far as collectability is concerned. I think they really hadn't matured as collectibles yet, let's say like in the 90s. But in the last dozen or so years, they really exploded in popularity. He looks like he's not in focus, I'm not sure. And you can see how those rings are attached There's a couple of slots and they just slide in there. That is that's original, that yarn. It's not been touched. That's exactly what it looks like. That's what the knot looks like. No one's redone that or retied it. That's the original yarn, original knot. That's what it should look like. His hands do have some hair sculpted onto them. And his feet obviously do as well. His chest doesn't, but he does have a brown chest. He's easily one of my favorite Wolfman action figures. Just that expression. Looking off to the side like that. Which is based on a famous movie still. That's not just a generic image they made up. They took that from a well-known movie still. As is this image. This painting is based on another movie still. I think this painting is from the original. I mean, it's depicting an image based on the original Wolfman. And if I say which movie the sculpt is based on, I will get it wrong. It's either House of Dracula or Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I don't remember which one, though. I'm probably completely wrong. It's probably Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, or who knows? I don't know. I'm always wrong about that stuff. No price sticker on that one. Yeah, Wolfman doesn't like Dracula. Forget that. He hates Dracula. And Wolfman's not, he's not sitting down. He's howling at the moon. Transformed by the moon into a hairy wolfman, he waits for an opportunity to use his monster crush arms. These have some of the text on the backs of these boxes is kind of cute. What does it say about Frankie? Even a monster has to sit and rest. No trouble for the fully posable Frankenstein. With a heavy thumping tread, Frankenstein greets everyone with his arms spread wide, ready to use his monster crush action. And they're calling him Frankenstein, not the Frankenstein monster on this text on the back. Whereas on the front it says Frankenstein monster. I think I like the Phantom a lot as well, but I think the Wolfman's my favorite figure from the set. Pretty sure. I also think they made some attempt to make his hands a little bit darker, maybe? It could be just my imagination. Probably is. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could swear that there are some Remco Wolfman figures out there that have darker hands. Am I wrong about that? Is that my imagination? I could swear I've seen some where it's not brown, but it's a little deliberately darker than the hands that the other figures have. But my childhood one and this one seems to have pretty standard glow white hands. I really like the Wolfman in this set. I think he's pretty cool. And he still has that Azrak Hanway brown pajamas costume that all the Azrak Hanway Wolfman figures had. And Wolfman never dressed like that in the movies. And the Aurora Wolfman didn't dress like that. He was shirtless, which is also not accurate as far as the movies are concerned. Let's see what we're looking at next. Listen to all that beautiful plastic, all those plastic bags. Okay, here we go. Let's look at Dracula. The evil of Dracula. As a kid, I thought that was Christopher Lee on the box art, so I always thought this was Christopher Lee's Dracula, and that's the way I played with him. Or my brother's Dracula, we decided he was Christopher Lee. In fact, obviously that's a generic Dracula, that sculpt, but that's Robert Quarry as Count Yorga in the artwork. Not officially, but that's obviously what it is. And it does not say Universal Studios. It says Count Dracula. I notice a lot of non-Universal Dracula merchandise says Count Dracula. They're trying to get away from just plain old Dracula because that's Universal's trademark as far as Universal is concerned. It sure would be cool if this was actually a Count Yorga figure, but it's not. It's a Dracula figure that uses Count Yorga artwork. And that does not look like Count Yorga. That is just a generic Dracula. He's very action toy oriented. I go back to Big Jim. That is the toy line that seems to be the inspiration for this. It looks like a Big Jim villain. Like he should be fighting Big Jim. Unlike the Azrak Hanway figures and some of the other toy lines from this era, the costume details are printed onto the fabric. He doesn't have, well, he has a jacket, but he doesn't have a multi-piece outfit with a separate medallion, a separate bow tie, and a separate vest. It's printed on. So more like the early Mego figures, like the Mad Monsters, where the details were just printed on the costume. His cape has elastic bands that go around his wrists. You can't see it, which is a nice touch. So when he raises his arms, the cape raises with his arms. And it's a nice cape that's fully lined with red. I don't know if these photos are accurate as far as what the production example looks like. These are probably prototypes. Because that, I don't know if you can really get him in a pose just like that. Uh-oh, Dracula's going to bite Frankenstein. I don't think Frankenstein likes that. Let me read what's going on. It looks like he's tracking Frankie with his footsteps, his footprints. Let's see. Dracula's face and hands glow in the dark as he starts out on another nocturnal adventure. I do think there's like an air adventure to this toy line. I think they're emphasizing the adventure rather than the scariness. Kneeling, fully posable Dracula searches for footprints. So he's tracking, I guess, the Frankenstein monster using his footprints. He's being investigative. It's like the Count Dracula Mysteries. Sunday nights at 8 p.m., the Count Dracula Mysteries. That might be an idea for a TV show. Have Dracula as a investigator, a detective, instead of like Murder, She Wrote. you would have Count Dracula investigating mysteries. A friend of mine back in the 90s joked about how someday there would be a show called either the Hannibal Lecter Mysteries or the Dr. Lecter Mysteries. And it would be kind of a banal mystery show, something like Murder, She Wrote, except the character investigating the mysteries would be Hannibal Lecter. And then eventually we did get a Hannibal TV show. It wasn't quite like he was envisioning it, but it was a TV show. Certainly didn't seem like there ever would be a Hannibal Lecter TV show at the time, but then it didn't seem like there would be Star Wars TV shows or Marvel, these kinds of Marvel superhero TV shows, as opposed to like the old ones like The Incredible Hulk or Amazing Spider-Man from the 70s. Well, I'm digressing quite a bit. Let's look at The Mummy. Beautiful, beautiful Boris Karloff artwork. Reminds me of the Telco Mummy. This is around the time when Universal started leaning into this Boris Karloff angle with The Mummy. Previously, most depictions of The Mummy used Carof, the Lon Chaney Jr. version of The Mummy. And I don't know when this started, but just off the top of my head, it seems like this is it. This Remco line was the start of Universal trying to impose the Karloff version of The Mummy as the definitive mummy for all merchandising. Not a very good fit, I think, even though he's the original mummy. For merchandise, for toys, I really think Carof works better. And I remember as a kid, having grown up with nothing but Carof mummy toys, this was interesting to see an Imhotep Boris Karloff mummy toy. That was a different thing. So there was some novelty to that. Now, of course, it's all we have. We never have anything other than Karloff mummies. He's a very cute figure. Very cute. Not very threatening. And kind of like the Migo mummy, he's got printed on bandages instead of actual wrapped bandages like the Azrak Hanway mummy or the Lincoln mummy. This mummy has printed bandages. He has pajamas with a bandage design on them. There's his ring back there. He's pretty cute. I think the mummy is the cutest one of the line. Not the best, but he's the cutest one. Just because he seems so mellow, non-threatening. I mean, how could you be scared of that? Now that, okay, you might be scared of that guy, but not that guy. And I want to show you all these pictures on the back just because I think they're cute. I think these little stories on the back are cute. Everyone gangs up on Frankenstein. Why is that? In spite of his restricting bandages, the mummy can bend in almost any position. Well, not quite, because the costume is pretty tight. the tailoring is a little bit off. It's a little too tight around the neck and the shoulders, so it is kind of restrictive. But if you just unfasten the buttons, then he can move around. That's what we did. We always played with him with the buttons unfastened. Now, as a kid, those 4 were the only ones I ever saw. I had no idea the Phantom or the creature existed. I didn't see those until I was an adult. Even though I saw that the little monsters had a Phantom and a creature, I didn't think that meant necessarily that there had to be a Phantom and a creature in a big size. Here's the creature from the Black Lagoon. A very unusual, for its time anyway, an unusual way to depict the creature with these creature pajamas. And like most of these, he's more cute than threatening. I mean, that is not threatening. That is just a cute monster. He's a cute, lovable monster. The artwork looks very different. And I don't remember if the same artist painted the second series, Creature and Phantom. I want to say no, because these paintings have gone up for auction. Some years ago, they were sold at auction. But clearly this is a different style than the first 4. We still have the Monsterizer on the back. Looks like different kids, and the photo has been changed to add the additional characters. We still have the monster going for a stroll on the back. Now it's the Phantom that's getting hugged by the creature. There we go, there's the front. The second series with the Creature and the Phantom, it does seem a little rushed. It seems like they rushed these to market. I'm not sure if they put the same amount of thought into these as they did the first 4. They certainly didn't take as much care with the art on the box. But given the format of this series, I don't know what else they could have done with a creature. They weren't going to sculpt a creature like the Azrak Hanway one. I mean, I'm sure they considered it, but to make all the toys consistent and look like they all belong in the same set, I can understand why they didn't do that. There's a lot more text on this than the previous versions. Slipping silently from the murky swamp, the creature stalks those who dare to trespass on his domain. The moonlight reveals the creature's glowing eyes. His fully posable body allows the creature to creep unseen closer and closer until, arg! His scaly reptilian arms encircle his victim with monster crush action. Arg. It's a pirate creature. So does its head glow, or is it just his eyes? Now, this is copyrighted 1980, but I think these came out in 81. I don't think these came out in 1980. Because as a kid, I remember when these other ones came out, and these were nowhere to be seen. And it did seem like there was at least a year before I saw the little ones on store shelves. His face and hands glow in the dark. So even though they're green, I guess his face and hands, the whole thing does glow. The text on the back made it seem like maybe it was just his eyes that glow, but the whole thing glows. Let's take another look at the creature. Okay, well, now last one. Oh boy, all this plastic. Beautiful plastic bags. I'm the king of plastic bags. And yes, I have acrylic cases and plastic bags, which is like a belt and suspenders. Okay, well, here is the Phantom. Very interesting sculpt. It does seem a little, again, the sculpt seems a little less refined and thus perhaps a bit rushed compared to the other ones. I do think, and you see, he doesn't even have a jacket like Dracula. You would think they would have made the cravat and the vest printed on, but then they would have given him a jacket. No, it's all printed on. And his cape is more minimal than Dracula's. It's not as fancy as Dracula's. He does have a hat and a mask, which is in there. I don't remember whose patch he's got. There's a patch in there, but it's not a Phantom patch. They didn't make a Phantom patch or a creature patch. They just put patches from one of the other monsters in the Phantom and creature boxes. But he definitely, I have looked inside this box, and he definitely has his mask and hat. He has everything he's supposed to have. And that artwork, well, it's not bad, but again, it's not like the first four. It's not nearly as refined and stylish as the paintings on the first four boxes. It's a different style. Lots more text on the creature and the Phantom. You can see his mask and his hat, what that looks like. Now the Phantom is returning the favor and hugging the creature. And it's interesting how the creature looks a lot darker. That prototype looks much darker than the one they ended up going with. You see if there's anything interesting on the back. In the vast caverns beneath the Paris Opera House, a ghostly figure rises from his secret lair. Hands and face glowing in the dark, the Phantom of the Opera seeks revenge upon his foes. Swinging from stage to balcony is no problem for the Phantom. He's fully posable. Yipes! The Phantom strikes again, hanging on with his monster crush locking action. So apparently the Phantom discovered the creature from the Black Lagoon lurking around the Paris Opera House and didn't like that at all. Decided to take matters into his own hands. Now, if you've got a loose one of these and you're looking for a replacement mask and hat, Brent's Dolls makes a replacement. If you buy them from Brent's Dolls, they will be painted. The mask part will be painted white and the hat will be painted black. On the actual toy, I think it's two pieces glued together, like white plastic and black plastic, and then fastened in there somewhere. I don't think the actual toy mask and hat, I don't think they're painted. I think they're just different colors of plastic. This, I believe, is 3D printed. Feels like 3D printed. material. And Brent Stalls makes these and sells these as replacements if you have a loose or box Phantom that's missing his mask and hat. I would just hope that anyone who would stick this in one of these boxes would find a way to indicate that it's not the original one. If anyone bought these in the future. These are the most expensive figures in that 9-inch line. And their prices have varied a lot over the years. Back in the 1990s, this Phantom was really going up there. It was over $1,000, heading to $2,000 in the 1990s. And then it went way down. And now I think it's climbing back up. I don't know what prices are lately. I would imagine $1,000 would be the minimum you would expect to pay to get one of these in a box. But I haven't priced it recently. I know the prices were all over the place on this creature over the last 20 years. It's really gone up and down, up and down. There was a point where it was also going into the $1,000 range and then went way down below 500 into like the 300 range for a while, and then it started climbing back. So I don't know where it's at now. But historically, these have been the more expensive two of the series and the harder ones to get. And I don't know where the creature is price-wise or either one of them, but I would think you'd have to throw $1,000 at least at a Phantom to get a nice boxed one. I can't imagine they're less than that these days, but maybe they are. I don't know. Haven't priced one lately. Creature, I just don't know where it's at. I'm sure it's gone up, because they've all gone up, well over 500. Because, I mean, it used to be you could get like Mummy and Frankenstein in the box for less than $100. That was a long time ago. You could get them for like $75 in a box. And I remember before I upgraded them, I had some rough ones in rough boxes, and I only paid like $75 for not that rough, not trash boxes, but just not minty. And then I upgraded to the ones I've got. And I got them at a good time before they took off, so I didn't pay much for these, most of them. I didn't pay much for this Phantom, really. I had two Phantoms at one point. One of them was a trade, and the other, well, I have an interesting story there. So back when the Phantom was like $1,000 and up in the 1990s, I had a Mego carded Iron Man. A Mego carded Iron Man, which at the time it didn't have a lot of value. People were not looking for that. Really hardcore Mego collectors knew that it was something special, but that wasn't enough to make that reflected in the price. I only paid $90 for the carded Mego Iron Man. And I knew when I bought it, I said, wow, it's a carded Mego Iron Man. I knew it was something special. But nobody wanted it. So at the time, it was not a big seller. It did not have a big value at the time. But this did. This was going for $1,000 and up. So I traded a carded Mego Iron Man for one of these. And I think it was this one. I had another one, but I think the one that was the actual object of the trade was this one. So at the time, that seemed like a great deal. Like I got a $1,000 toy for $90. Now, of course, that the Mego carded Iron Man is like, I don't know, $10,000 or more than that even. I don't know who knows. It's ridiculous now. And this is still around the same value. This hasn't really appreciated that much. Still a lot of money, but it just hasn't gone up. I don't know where it's at now, but it's not thousands of dollars. It's not like that. So financially, I guess in the long run, it wasn't a good trade. But at the time, it was a great trade. At the time, I was really proud of myself. And then I don't know what I sold the other one I had, but I don't remember what I got for it. It wasn't a lot, because by then the market was going back down, and that's why I sold it. I said, whoops, these things, the value is going, so I better unload this extra one. But I'm glad I didn't sell them both. I'm glad I still have one. As a kid, I never knew these existed, never saw them. Had no idea Remco made these two. Until I became an adult collector, and I was very surprised to learn that these existed. I don't know if the first time I saw these, if it was at Bob Monco's house, probably. I don't remember, but I just remember being very surprised at what in the world are these. I thought they were customs. I thought they were fake. I thought they were like fantasy toys. Like, what if Remco made the Phantom and the Creature? No, they were real. So I was very surprised when I first saw those in my 20s, I guess, early 20s. And it's strange I didn't see them as a kid, because I should have. I was aware of what was going on. I don't know why or how these were distributed. They must have been very scarcely distributed, or else I should have seen them. I think it's time to move on. I don't have a Monsterizer to show you. That's the only other piece in this set, the 9-inch set. They didn't make a play case or anything else. They made some makeup kits, and some people kind of consider those part of the line, but those are for you to put on. There's like Halloween products for you to put on your face. They're not made to interact with these toys. But the only other piece in this set is the Monsterizer, and I don't have that. One of these days I will get that, because I've got all the figures. I might as well have a Monsterizer. Just got to find one in condition that I can live with at a price I can live with, which is a tall order, because the ones that I've sold lately have been in rough condition for a lot of money, which is a bad combination. Well, let's see. I don't think I can get all of these on the table at once. No, I can't. Too many of them. Yeah, there's too many. Well, maybe they'll just topple over and destroy everything. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Forget that. Oh, I can just hold them up. Let's get a money shot here. Really, the Phantom and the Creature should be on the top, but whatever. We're not going to get picky here. There it is, the entire line of the action figures, minus the Monsterizer. Now should we talk about the monsters at home? Yeah, let's talk about, since they're connected with the big figures, let's talk about monsters at home next. But first, we have to clean these out, get rid of these. So let's go back to our time travel and jump ahead half an hour into the future when this is all cleaned up. Ready? Here we go. We're back. We had a little time displacement by the power of the I Ching. We traveled forward in time, and we got rid of the 9-inch monsters, and the NECA monsters are long gone, and now we have the monsters at home. So let's talk about the monsters at home. That's what we're going to talk about now. Look at that little cutie. Now, the monsters at home, they're basically, well, look at him. Isn't he just full of angst? Look at that guy. Just the weight of the world is on his shoulders. These toys are basically the heads from the 9-inch series attached to very basic, crude fabric bodies. And the hands, they're either the same hands or very similar to the 9-inch figures. They're attached to these fabric sleeves, but it's just a little hand puppet fabric body, just basic shape with the head and the two hands on it. There's no details in the costume. I don't think any of these have any kind of printing on the costume. Like there's no bandages on the mummy or scales on the creature, no tuxedo details on Dracula. So it's all very basic. Since the heads are really the main attraction with all these toys, these monsters at home, let's mention now a little something about these Remco monster heads. The heads on the 9-inch figures were sculpted by an artist named Ken Sheller. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I couldn't find an interview with him where he said his own name, but it's spelled Kenscheller, Ken Sheller. And he sculpted heads for Mego before he worked for Remco. So many well-known 1970s Mego figures had heads sculpted by Ken Sheller. He went on to sculpt toys for just about every major toy company in the 80s and 90s. You name it, he probably worked for them, whatever company you might think of. It seems like he worked for just about everybody. So he was prolific. He really got around. And I think it's because of his involvement, probably, that these now seem so iconic. They got one of the best guys in the business to do this. And he already put his stamp on the 70s with his iconic classic sculpts for Mego. So when he shaped what we think a 70s action figure should look like. Not single-handedly. He was one of the people who shaped our idea of what a 70s action figure should look like. So it's not an accident that these 9-inch Remcos and these monsters at home, that these heads are so instantly classic. We just look at them, and no matter how simplistic they are, they have that iconic quality. These bubbles are just barely attached to these cars. If you think the NECA bubbles are bad, I'm surprised these have held on this long. I mean, I'm happy they have, but I'm also a bit surprised that they have. What a weird idea. Monsters at home. Just so strange. A hand puppet, why? And they're in these little boxes. It's like luggage. It's like if you're going on a trip and you want to take your Frankenstein along with you. You get to the hotel room, set it down, open the luggage, and this is what you see. And you say, "Oh, sorry, Frankie, I know that was a long trip. Come on, get out of there, stretch yourself out a little. You can lie on the bed." When we did our little time jump, I wanted to double check the timeline on these things. When I said the 9-inch figures were released in 1980, I hesitated a little bit. And that's because there's been some disagreement about that. And just in the last 24 hours, I've seen people claim that those figures were introduced in 78, 79, 80, 81. Seems to be a lot of disagreement. I maintain that they were introduced in 1980, 80, not 81, not 79, 80, 1980. I'm talking about the large figures that we just saw. And my reason for saying 1980, they're in the 1980 Remco catalog, and that seems to be when they were introduced. That was their first appearance. And I know as a child, I absolutely 100% did not acquire those toys in 1981. I know how old I was in 1981 and how old I was in 1980, and I absolutely did not get those toys in 1981. And I'm quite confident that they were earlier. I know there's some some boxes, I think they're from the UK, that are marked Ideal instead of Remco. And I think the date on those is, I don't know, is it 78 or 79? I don't know why they're marked that way, but they did not come out in those years. They came out later, 80 or whatever, but they came out later than 78, 79. But those have created confusion, and I don't know what the reason is why they have those earlier dates on those boxes. Those, I think they're UK boxes. But those dates are not when those toys were released. Those 9-inch figures came out in 1980. And in 1981, so in 80, Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy came out, and the Monsterizer came out in 80. In 1981, they added the Creature and the Phantom. And also in 1981, they came out with the Remco introduced the Mini Monsters and the Play Case in 1981. And this would be the non-glowing versions. 1982, they introduced these Monsters at Home figures. And I think the Mini Monsterizer, I think, was 82. And I think that's also the year when they switched from non-glow to glow with the Mini Monsters. And 1980, and I could be wrong about the Mini Monsterizer, that I think that's 82. It could have come out in 83, but I'm pretty sure it came out in 82. In 83, they had already canceled the 9-inch line. Those were not offered in 83, but the Monsters at Home were still available, and the glow-in-the-dark Mini Monsters were still available, and the Play Case was available. And the Play Case had changed from non-glow to glow in 83. Could have changed in 82, but the Play Case in 83 was definitely the glow version. And the 9-inch figures, all 6, and the 9-inch Monsterizer were gone in 83. And I don't think there's any trace of any of these Universal Monster toys in 84. I think 83 is the last year. So as best as I can tell, mostly just looking at Remco catalogs, that was the timeline. And that corresponds with my memory of when my brother and I, when we had the 9-inch Monsters, and when I saw them in stores, and when I saw the Mini Monsters in stores. That all matches up. Those years, based on the catalog chronology, those years match my recollection. And I'm absolutely sure that my brother and I got our Remco Monsters for birthday or Christmas of 1980. That's when we would have gotten those. Because they were like birthday, Christmas type of toys for us. In 1981, I didn't get any toys for Christmas or birthday. My last hurrah, as far as when I got toys as a gift, was 1980. And in 1981, I was supposed to be grown up. I didn't get any toys. I mean, I might have gotten like an Empire Strikes Back figure or something, like a little one, in the first half of the year, 81. But by the time you get to summer of 81 forward, no one's buying me toys. And certainly by the time you get to my birthday, which is late in the year, and then Christmas, for sure, I got no toys. So the only time, the latest I could have gotten those Remco figures is 1980, Christmas, birthday, 1980. And I'm pretty sure that's when I got them. That's when my brother got his. And I know I didn't get anything like that in 1981. So that's the chronology, and I'm babbling all this because I see a lot of different dates. I've seen some videos, I've seen some online discussions. It seems like everyone's got a different chronology for this stuff. Everyone's got different years. Every time you see someone talking about it, they have a different year when these things came out. But I think what I just gave you is almost the most definitive one. I'm a little fuzzy, like 82, 83, about when the little Monsterizer came out, and when they switched from non-glow to glow with the mini monsters. I'm a little fuzzy about that. But everything else I just told you I think is very solid. What else did I want to talk about? Oh yeah, I also, in my little time travel experience since a few minutes ago, I looked at eBay sold auctions to see what are the current prices on these things, because I was talking to you about values and I really didn't know. I couldn't find any sold auctions for a boxed 9-inch creature or phantom. I did see one loose creature that sold for over $700, but I didn't see a phantom or a creature. I didn't see a phantom at all, the 9-inch one, and I didn't see a box creature. I was surprised that the Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, the value on those seems to have gone, because they're selling at the kind of prices that you would have found 25 years ago. Like $200 or $300 each, and sometimes less than $200 for a boxed one. That's like 1998 prices. So I was surprised that they were that low, because I know there was a point where even the Mummy, which is the most common one of the 9-inch figures, and then Frankenstein, I guess, is like second most common, and then Dracula, and then Wolfman, and then it goes, then the scarcity level goes off the charts with creature and phantom. But even the Mummy, it got to the point where a nice box Mummy was getting into the 500-ish range, and that was the most common one. So they seem to have peaked, and now they've subsided, and you can get boxed, probably Frankenstein Mummy for, in some cases, it seems less than $200, which is, again, prices from 25 years ago. And Dracula and Wolfman looks like $250 to $350 or something like that, which, again, that's like 1998 to 2002, kind of that era, millennial prices. So they seem to have collapsed to about half what they were several years ago. Whereas the Phantom and the creature, at least the creature, seems to be holding its value very strongly. And all the action seems to be with the mini monsters. That's what people want now. They want those little 3 3/4-inch mini monsters, because those sell strong. I was looking at sold auctions on those, and those are definitely outselling the big ones now, except for Dracula. Not Dracula, except for Phantom and Creature. There's some crazy asking prices on the little monsters, but even sold auctions, those are really going strong. And I guess it depends on condition, and are they slabbed, and that kind of stuff. But I guess that makes sense, because they're more compatible with the current trends in collecting. People like 80s toys and Star Wars toys, although Star Wars itself is really has collapsed as a collectible for, I think, cultural reasons. Star Wars adjacent stuff is strong, and 80s stuff is strong. And those little figures, I think, are more compatible with the taste and the mindset of 80s, 90s collectors, and they're probably easier to display, etc., etc. Personally, I like the 9-inch figures. I prefer those. I like the mini monsters, But I prefer the 9-inch figures. I know there are people who think the mini monsters are just the greatest monster toys ever made. Okay, but I prefer the 9-inch figures. I like those. That's what I had as a kid. I didn't have any of the mini monsters as a kid because they came out in '81, and I wasn't playing with toys anymore. I saw them in the stores, but I never owned one as a kid, and neither did my brother. But so the 9-inch figures are kind of like my last hurrah of playing with toys. I think they have a special nostalgic value because of that. The Kenner Alien and some of the large size Star Wars figures and some of that stuff that came out like 79, 80, those hold a special place in my heart because those were the last toys I ever got. That was my last big blowout of my childhood before I was dragged kicking and screaming into adolescence. So, well, let's talk more about these monsters at home. This is the one that seems to most lend itself to the format, Dracula. And that is very Lincoln-esque. Look at that artwork. It looks like something you would see on a Lincoln International Monster card. He looks cool coming out of that coffin. I always wonder, is it a coffin or a casket? I always get that wrong. But he looks cool coming out of that. He looks at home. He is a monster at home. But he really looks like he belongs there. The character makes sense coming out of that box. Instead of like a piece of luggage that happens to have Dracula in it, this looks like sort of like a Muppet version of Dracula. Or I don't know, a cartoony version of Dracula in his little miniature coffin. Maybe a Pee-wee's Playhouse version of Dracula. But it does look like Dracula in a place where Dracula might actually live. He might actually rest in this coffin during the day. And it's interesting, they've got this sort of a movie-style logo with the clapboard design. I'm talking about those things. I'm seeing that, but I bet that's not what it's supposed to be. When I see that, I think of a clapboard. I don't know if that's the right name for it. But you know what I'm talking about. But that's probably not what that is. That is the monster rising from his home, rising from his coffin. I bet that's what that's supposed to represent. That angled monsters at home. I'm thinking it's like trying to connect it with movies and the clapboard. I bet it's the monster rising up out of the coffin. And these glow in the dark, at least the heads and hands do, and they're licensed by Universal Studios. Here's the back. And at this point, they're not promoting the 9-inch figures. They're promoting the little guys. And the monsters at home. And I did an entire episode on these monsters at home. So you can find that. I don't know if it has any information that I'm not giving you now. But I think in that episode, I read some of this text on the back. So if you want to hear that, look at that episode. There's the creature. Same head as before. We can get a little better look at it because we're seeing it from the profile instead of just from the front. Get some detail on the back of his head there. So this is nice. It gives us a better look at what that head sculpt looks like. And he does have his creature hands. He doesn't have generic hands. He does have the correct creature hands. I don't think there's any artwork on that body. I'm not sure. Does he have fins attached, maybe? I don't think so. I don't think there's anything. I'm looking at the picture on the card. Yeah, it's very plain. I don't think there's anything on that body. It's just green. Very basic. And the creature is in what they call a sea chest. So I'd say kind of like a pirate's chest, maybe? I don't know. They call it a sea chest. He's cute. I mean, they're all cute. And this mummy one, this is the other one that makes sense, like the Dracula. And it seems to share the same mold as the Dracula coffin. The creature and the Frankenstein have the same rectangular mold. And the mummy and Dracula have this coffin-shaped mold. Only mummy is this Egyptian-themed sarcophagus. No bandages, just brown. He's a cute little mummy. He's saying, yes, what can I do for you? Why have you disturbed me? I think, just looking at these pictures, see, I've never had one of these out of the package. I don't know what the backs of these boxes look like, but it seems like you can stick your hand through the back of these. You can put the monster on your hand and just play with it like that, or you can, there's some kind of an opening on the back and you can stick your hand through these and control the monster inside the box. But I've never seen, I don't think I've ever seen one of these out of the package. I've seen some pictures on eBay. I don't think I've ever seen one in person out of the package, so I don't know exactly what the back looks like. I mean, it looks like they do have a back, so maybe it opens up. I'm just impressed that these bubbles have not fallen off. I hope they don't fall off right now. That would be embarrassing. There's Frankie in whatever that is. It says it's a sea chest in that language down there. Obviously, that's not a sea chest. I say it's a very unique piece of luggage. If you're going on vacation and you need to take Frankenstein with you, you put him in this. And it's too big for carry-on, so this needs to be checked luggage. And he probably gets bounced around a lot. Then you have to wait at that conveyor belt while this thing comes on the conveyor. And you say, that's mine, and you pull it off. And then you put it in the taxi, and you get to the hotel, and you throw this on the bed, and then you open it up, and that's what you see inside. Just like that. Well, these are adorable, cute toys. Very esoteric. I think they've become a little more popular in recent years. At one point, I think collectors barely knew they even existed. But I think they've gotten more publicity, more discussion in recent years. And as the Remco monsters have become better known and more people have started collecting them, just when you thought you completed your collection, you need these. And I bet these are some of the last things that people collect after they feel like they're at a place where they got everything else, the big or small sets, they have everything else they want. These are probably then they turn to these, like the last frontier of the Remco monster line. But then there's the makeup kits, so don't forget those. I don't have any of those. But I think Remco Monster collectors consider those makeup kits part of the set, part of the series, part of the line. I've never had any of the makeup kits. I remember them as a kid, though. I do remember seeing those makeup kits at the store. I never saw these at the store, that's for sure. I saw the mini monsters. Of course, I saw the big monsters, not Phantom or Creature, though. I don't know if I saw the Monsterizer at the store. I must have, because, as I said before, neighbor had one, brought it to the house. But I never saw these. I did not know these existed until I was an adult collector. Okay, well, I think that's enough for the monsters at home. Now let's begin the final leg of this journey and look at the 3 3/4 inch Remco Monsters, which have, I think, risen to the level of becoming the centerpiece of the Remco monster line in the eyes of many collectors. A lot of collectors, when you say Remco monster, that's what they think of, the mini monsters. So we will look at those in a moment. Let's have another time jump right now. Here we go. Here we are. The monsters at home have gone home. Now we have the super world famous 3 3/4 inch Remco mini monsters. I don't know whether to collect these or ask them for their autographs. They're so famous, so popular. Everybody loves them. The one and only Remco mini monsters. Here they are. But before we talk about these, let's talk about something even more famous. My cat, Billy. He has been on strike all season. He refuses to jump up here and say hello to you. So earlier, I got some video of him. Billy usually sits down there somewhere and just kind of chills out, kind of sits back and as I do this show. And here's some video I shot earlier of Billy sitting right over there. That's what he looks like when he chills out as I'm recording this. So when you see me kind of looking distracted, looking off to the side, kind of pausing, like something's on my mind, I'm looking at my cat over there. Especially if it looks like he might jump up, I'm hoping, oh yes, maybe he'll jump up. Or if it looks like he's getting into trouble, he'll do that sometimes. But most of the time, he just kind of lies there and chills out, just like that. So that's what I'm seeing as I'm recording this. I can just look over in front of me, a little off to the side, and that's what I see. I see my cat, Billy. And I don't know why he doesn't jump up here anymore. I guess he's on strike. I guess he doesn't realize that the strikes are over. That's all settled. He can come back and he can be on camera again. But I don't know, maybe he's got different representation. I'm not sure. But little does he know that he's now in this episode. So I might hear from his attorney. I might have like a very serious looking little cat attorney visit me and with a little briefcase and say that I have breached my contract by putting Billy in this episode without his authorization. Okay, so now you've seen Billy. Maybe someday he'll start jumping up on the table again, but it could be that he's just over that. He's just not doing that anymore. Well, let's look at these toys. Now, this is the first time I've had these figures out of their protective bags, because usually I have them in a bag and backer card like that. I don't have acrylic cases for these little ones. But this is the first time I've had them out of those bags this century. I don't think I've had these. They haven't felt the fresh air in the 21st century. I'm sure of that. This is the first time I've actually touched them since the 1990s. There's Frankenstein. The iconic, classic, amazing 3 3/4 inch Remco Frankenstein with this incredible image of Boris Karloff as the monster, and that is from Bride of Frankenstein. I'm rubbish when it comes to figuring out what movie a Wolfman image is from. I can tell if it's the first Wolfman, that I can tell, but if after that I can't. I just know it's not from the first movie. But I'm very good at picking out what movie a Frankenstein image is from, and that's obviously Bride of Frankenstein. But the Wolfman looks different in every movie. And if you're a true Wolfman aficionado, you can look at a still or an image that's based on a still, and you can say, ah, yes, that is from House of Frankenstein, or Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. That's what the backs look like. And remember what those NECA cards look like. You can see how the NECA figures were trying to imitate the look of the back of these cards. I don't know what this photographic process is called that was used to create this beautiful artwork. NECA did not use the same process, and these original cards look better. They look more dramatic. It makes a difference what technique you use to achieve this. And most of mine, really all but one of mine, do not have the starburst design. If I could choose one version, one card variant, and just have a complete set of nothing but that, it would be the starburst one, but I only have one like that. And the only non-glow I have is the creature. I was never so in love with these that I wanted to get every single one non-glow, glow without the starburst, and glow with the starburst. I just didn't feel like I just wanted one of each character plus the creature variant. And then I was happy. And I prioritized the glow ones because I just prefer the glow-in-the-dark ones. And I prefer, just in general, if it glows in the dark, that's the version I want, the one that glows in the dark, because to me that just says monster. Being a 70s kid, everything glowed in the dark, as it did in the 60s. That's when that started with the glow-in-the-dark monster stuff. Here's Dracula. I wish I did have acrylic cases for these. Understand that for most of my collecting career, these carded mini monsters really were not worth a whole lot. So I didn't invest the money in protecting them with acrylic cases. And back when I had those cases made for the 9-inch figures, those had to be custom made. They didn't have standardized ones yet. Those were custom made. All of my acrylic cases are custom made from long ago. Now it's much easier to just go online and buy a case for whatever toy you need, because there are so many there are companies that make those things now, and you can get them for pretty much any toy line. And so maybe I should get some for these. I think that's a pretty decent Bela Lugosi likeness, actually, given the 3 3/4 inch format. Given the format, I think that's pretty good. And I like how his cape bends out like that. It's very elegant looking. Look at that. Look at the shape of it. It's not like Darth Vader or Ben Kenobi. These capes have been compared to that. And of course, that's where the idea came from, to do capes in that style, but I think these capes are much more elegant, these monster capes. And NECA didn't really do a good job of capturing the die-cut design of that collar or the cape itself. Look at the round curves and how it's very, very appropriate for Dracula. It's not a crude utilitarian kind of a cape. It's done very nicely, and I like that it has a red lining. They went the extra mile to give it that red lining. I think the NECA cape kind of misses the mark. It's not as elegant as this, particularly the collar just doesn't have the right shape on the NECA figure. Now here we have a Bela Lugosi image, and the NECA figure has a different Bela Lugosi image. It does not have this one, because this is Universal licensed. This is a Universal Studios licensed Dracula. The 9-inch one was not. It did not have a Universal license. This one is Universal licensed. And I don't know all the minutiae of the court cases, but in between the production of the 9-inch Dracula and this Dracula, there was a court case that allowed Universal to use Bela's likeness. And then, not long afterward, things changed again, and then they couldn't use it anymore. But there was this window where they could, and this got out the door with this beautiful Bela Lugosi likeness. And I like that it has the fangs, because you'd never see that now. Everything is so serious. I feel like the Joker. Why so serious? Everything is so serious and so adult-oriented, and just nothing can be fun anymore. But things could be fun when this was made. And so we have Dracula with goofy fangs in his mouth, like a toy should have. A Dracula toy should have these fangs in his mouth. And the toy itself has it. Today, Lugosi Enterprises would never allow that. And you saw with the NECA one, it doesn't have fangs like that on the artwork. Well, everything has to be very dignified now. When I bought these, I wanted good condition, but my standards for condition back then were different than my standards now. I think all these are in very nice condition, but in some of these, the hanger hole, the peg hole is kind of rough on a few of them, and I can see this one is kind of rough. This is my favorite of the line. This is my favorite figure in this line, the Phantom of the Opera. And I remember as a child, well, actually an adolescent at that point, I remember as an adolescent seeing this in the store and being particularly fascinated by the Phantom, this Phantom figure. There's something about this figure really interested me. I was not playing with toys anymore at that point, and no one was buying me toys. But I remember going in the toy department and seeing this figure and being very interested in it. If I were going to buy a toy at that age, this might have been the one I bought, because something about this Phantom really fascinated me. At that point in my life, I had never seen a Phantom of the Opera action figure. I didn't have the Lincoln Phantom. I didn't have a distinct memory of seeing the Lincoln Phantom. I'm sure I did see it. Well, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I think I saw it, but I don't have a specific memory of that. And certainly by the time I was looking at this, I wasn't thinking of Lincoln Monsters. I never saw the Remco Phantom, the 9-inch one. I never saw that, so I never saw the 9-inch Remco Phantom. And I saw of course, the Aurora Phantom model kit. I had that as a kid. But there weren't many Phantom items out there, so this was really unusual, and particularly because it was so authentic to the Universal Lon Chaney Phantom. It wasn't just a generic Phantom like the Lincoln one. It was very specific. This was the Lon Chaney Sr. Universal Studios Phantom of the Opera. So this was a big surprise, seeing this on a peg hook as an adolescent. I was very surprised to see this. Surprised that there would even be such a thing at that point as a Lon Chaney, specifically Lon Chaney Phantom, hanging on a peg hook in a store. That just surprised me. So this, maybe because of that memory particularly, this is my favorite of the line. Yeah, I think he might be the most common one or the easiest to get. It seems like there are more Phantoms out there, or they're more readily available. But this is my favorite. He just looks unusual. Even in that very small format, it captures the character. It captures particularly the Chaney version of the character. And it captures the pathos of the character. And that little Carof Frankenstein looks like a Boris Karloff Frankenstein. The figure does, not just the artwork. And the Dracula looks like a Bela Lugosi Dracula. Even these tiny little heads with such minimal sculpts, so basic, and yet they capture the actors. And that's certainly true with this one. This is the Mummy. There's a starburst design. I don't know what collectors are calling these versions of the cards these days, but back in the day they were called the starburst cards. And I like that. I like that. If I could have all of them one style, it would be this style. And this is the style NECA used for their retro versions. And of course that image, and I remember I saw this as a kid as well. I saw this Mummy as a kid. And I remember even back then thinking, that's Ardith Bey. That's not Imhotep, the Mummy. That's Ardith Bey. I mean, it's like having a Batman figure with a picture of Bruce Wayne on the card. That's Ardith Bey. That's not the Mummy. That's not Imhotep. That's his alter ego, Ardith Bey. That bubble's very clear. That's one of the clearest bubbles I've got. And as basic as that sculpt is, you can still tell it's the Karloff Mummy. And it's very, very, very basic and crude, but you can tell who it is. And it looks a lot like the 9-inch figure. Very consistent. There's that wonderful artwork. And it is interesting that they chose to use Ardith Bey instead of one of the famous stills of the Imhotep mummy, like that, with his head leaning back. Maybe because his eyes were closed in those shots, I don't know. This is definitely a more intense image with a scowling look. And here we have the Wolfman. Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. One of the best images of the Wolfman, that particular still. I've always liked that one. And I used to know which movie that was from. If I try to say which movie it's from, I'll be wrong, so I just won't even bother. Obviously, it's not from The Wolfman. It's from one of the later films. And whichever one I say, it'll be the wrong one, so I'm not even going to try. So it's shaking all around here. Trying to get a good shot. The Wolfman, even to the naked eye, this toy always looks like he's out of focus. Something about the way he's painted is very indistinct. And I've seen other examples that also have that vague paint application where you just don't see the details in a crisp way. They're not differentiated very well. the way it's painted. I don't know if a non-glow version might be better to make the details stand out. But it's always been curious with this particular figure. I've just noticed that the paint, they're all kind of painted in that sort of hazy, vague, weird way where the details just don't, and I thought very blurry, the details just don't stand out. It's hard to make them out. And I think this one has trouble standing. I've heard some people say that. Wolfman figures often do if they're sculpted with a screen accurate leg pose where they're standing on their tiptoes, and it makes it hard for the figures to stand. Very dramatic image. Even with my quibbles about the paint, I mean, the sculpt it's a wonderful, wonderful sculpt. Very screen accurate. I mean, it looks like Lon Chaney Jr. It looks like his Wolfman, particularly. Now, that top button is unbuttoned, I think, in most of the movies. It's buttoned up. Although I did see, I don't know which film it is, I did see a still where I was surprised that it was unbuttoned. But most of the time, the Wolfman is buttoned up, so they don't have to bother with. So Jack Pierce didn't have to bother with trying to make hair on his chest. And of course, he's got his sleeves all the way to his wrists, and he's got his pants legs all the way down. Unlike the Aurora model, which is shirtless and the pants are ripped up. Now this replica of the Remco mini monster, you can really see what that sculpt looks like blown up like that, because it's a very accurate rendition of this little sculpt. And it really shows off how nice that sculpt is. This is not, what was it, NECA that put out that series of masks? I think they did. I think it was NECA that did the series of Remco masks, and I wonder if their Remco tribute series was kind of brewing already in their development process when they did that. But this is not one of those. This is from Mortarheads, the artist that created those masks. This predates that mass-produced set. This is made of thick latex. This is an artist piece. It's signed inside. It's very thick, unlike the ones, the mass-produced ones. So this predates those by at least a year or two. And I don't have any of when they went into mass production, I don't have any of those. I just have this one. Now let's look at the creature. A nice sort of minty green creature. It's the Ben Chapman land creature in the artwork. That's the glow-in-the-dark version. Curious color. It's interesting that they couldn't come up with a more character-appropriate green that would glow. But they did, because of that, though, it kind of has a charm that it wouldn't have if it had different, maybe a more, shall we say, realistic color. It has a charm with this weird, electric fluorescent green. It looks like it should be a Lifesaver flavor or some kind of candy. Beautiful cards. There's an austere quality to this artwork. A severe quality. This almost like a brutalistic sort of minimal industrial quality that it just gives them a different vibe from the more dreamlike aesthetic of the Aurora kits, particularly the glow kits, or the more kitschy vibe of the Azrak Hanway toys, or even the 9-inch monsters, which have, because of the fonts and everything they're using, it has some of that severity. But this, with its black and white processed images and the same fonts as the bigger figures, it has a very industrial, severe, I think severe is the best word. It has a sort of a brutal, severe quality. It doesn't have that kind of fairy tale-like quality or kitschy, scary quality that 60s, 70s monster artwork has. And this is the final figure we're going to look at, and it's the only non-glowing Remco mini monster I own. And the reason I have this one is obviously because it looks so very different. The non-glowing creature looks completely different. The same sculpt, I mean, the color just changes the whole thing. And obviously that's the color you would expect a creature toy to be. That's the kind of color you would expect a creature from the Black Lagoon action figure to be. And you can see the detail much better. Well, if it's in focus. I can't get too close with these things because the camera just can't handle it. I don't know, it seems like it's doing okay there. But it gets, if I bring it much closer, it goes out of focus. And these are so small, I mean, you have to have like a macro lens to make it work, to really see the details. And these phones I'm using just can't zoom in. They can't lock in that well at this size. I don't know, that's not too bad. It looks okay with the viewfinder. You can see it doesn't have the glow-in-the-dark circle that the other ones do. No mention of anything glowing in the dark because it doesn't glow in the dark. And let's see if the back is any different. Not really. It's pretty much the same back as the rest. So there's the non-glow creature. Really well sculpted for the size and the time, the era. Very well done. It's stylized, but it fits the aesthetic of the rest of the line. And someday I might acquire a few more non-glows. I'm never going to own all the variants of all the card variants. I'm just not interested in that. But you know, it'd be nice to have a couple more non-glow or a couple more starburst. I'm never going to own the Monsterizer for the mini monsters. It's too expensive, and I just don't care about it enough to pay that kind of money. I do want one of the play cases. And for a while, there was a find on play cases, the mini monster play case. And there were sealed ones, shrink-wrapped sealed ones that were readily available. You could get them for a couple $100 or less. And then they dried up. The find dried up. So there was a minute there where it was easy to get one of those. And I should have jumped in then and got one. I didn't. And now all the ones you see on eBay now are opened and used. And if a sealed one does turn up, it goes for a lot of money now. So I missed the boat on that one. But I would like to have the play case. Sealed would be nice. If it's not sealed, then I'd want it absolutely complete, unused, as if it were sealed, as if I were the one who opened it. I don't know if I'm going to find one in that kind of condition at a price I want to pay, but who knows? If I did, I would buy that. I like the play case. I like the environment. It's such a small little thing, and yet it has such an immersive environment. It's surprising how much play value they packed into that little thing. I don't think I saw the play case as a kid. I know I didn't own one, I don't remember seeing one as a kid, but I like that toy. The little Monsterizer, yeah, I don't feel like I need that. I do feel like I need to add the big one to my collection in a decent box. You can find them in trashed boxes. I'd like to have one in a decent box, decent condition. Obviously, if I could get one absolutely mint unused with the decals still on the sheet and nothing applied to the toy and the instructions and the inserts and everything, that would be the way to do it. But I don't think I'm going to find it like that. And if I do, it's going to be so much money that I'm just going to think, what else could I buy with that money? Things that might be a lot cooler to me than a Monsterizer. I'm just looking at these cards. This glow creature is so flat. It's just perfect. And then other ones are kind of curled. Like the mummy and the glow creature have very nice cards. Very flat, perfect all the way around. Clear bubbles. And then some of these other ones, the cards are kind of curving. And the bubbles are turning brown. Different levels of condition here. But it's a beautiful set, and I can see why people are excited about the mini monster set, particularly, and it does fit the current collecting aesthetic and the kind of thing people want to buy, the kind of thing people like, the kind of stuff people are collecting these days. I think it's more the average toy collector today. These fit their collection a little better than those boxed big figures. But I'm still partial to the big ones. I prefer those. Not that I don't like these, but I prefer the 9-inch toys. I just think they're better toys, more interesting to me. I like toys with fabric costumes. I like bigger toys. That's just me. And I have a childhood memory that connects with those big ones. And these, yes, I saw them in stores, but I never owned them or played with them. And I wasn't playing with toys by the time these came out. I was still playing with toys when the 9-inch ones came out. So the 9-inch ones have a little more of an emotional connection to me. But I certainly recognize the beauty of this line of toy. But I certainly recognize the beauty of this toy line. And the appeal of this toy line. So with a modern toy line, I think I would say the cards are really what makes the line. But in this case, the toy sculpts and the cards are both amazing. And they both work together and they both fit perfectly. I think it was just lightning struck with this Remco line. And in my opinion, both the big and the small lines. I'm looking at imperfections now. I see that this Wolfman has a little dent right there in his bubble. And I'm seeing that the Phantom has a little dent right there. That's what I mean when I say my standards of condition have changed over the years, and things that seemed absolutely mint in the 1990s, now maybe I wouldn't even buy it now because of the little issues. But I think even with some of these issues, these are all in nice shape. I'm happy with this set. If I never get another one, I'm fine. If I could get a few more, that'd be great. I've been recording this during a thunderstorm. I don't think there have been some very loud thunderclaps, but not while I was recording. Like in between my snaps, there's been some very loud thunderclaps, and I keep thinking the lights are just going to go out. That's it. That's it for the 2023 to 2024 season of Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. Thank you for watching. Didn't have quite as many episodes this season as in the past, but for my sanity, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I need to take a little bit of the pressure off because I don't have a lot of time, and it's difficult to just to get all this together and to shoot one of these, and particularly to edit these things. It takes about a week to edit each episode. So it's very time consuming. It's like a side hustle. It's like a part-time job in addition to my full-time job, only this job doesn't pay. So it's a big commitment for time and effort and energy. And I can't put shows out every single week or multiple times a week. I know some people can do that. I just can't. So I try to make a count when I am here communicating with you. I try to make a count, and I try to make these something that you can come back to. And I know people do rewatch these episodes, and I get feedback that they watch shows from years ago that they are rewatchable. And I don't know how many YouTube channels can say that. So I'm proud of that I made something that people find rewatchable. I'm very happy for everyone who has joined me this episode, this season, or throughout the seasons. And I don't know where this might go in the future, but we are going to have as usual, a summer hiatus. I hope to have a live stream in June, as I always have. It's become a tradition. So I will do a live stream in June. That's my plan. There might be a special episode or two over the summer. I don't know. I don't have anything planned. I really wanted to bring you some interviews and some remote episodes and all kinds of stuff, and none of that panned out. Even for this episode, I wanted to do some of that, and it just didn't work. And for other episodes, I wanted to do some special things, and it's not panning out. So if something like that does pan out, you might see me again over the summer. If not, then you'll see me close to Halloween. And we'll try to have some more monster fun next fall 2024. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel so you'll know when I do upload an episode. I might surprise you, and who knows, in July or August I might have an episode you don't want to miss that, right? Or if I start uploading more synthesizer videos or Topstone videos, I'm sure you want to see that, don't you? So you want to be notified. So subscribe, click the bell, and then you'll know if I pop back on with something you might want to see. Also join the Facebook Basement of Horror group, because that's all year round. And I'm in there. I try to kind of let the members direct the discussion in that group. But I am in there, and I do comment and post and react to your comments. And it's a good group. We don't have any, at this time, we don't have any problem children in there. Everything's going smoothly. Knock on particle board. It's an enjoyable group. It doesn't have some of the drama that other groups have, thank goodness. So I think and it's all just vintage monsters. But it's not draconian in enforcing, the toy must be made between this year and this year, or you can't. We're not like that. Or it has to be this particular studio or this particular toy company. We're not as strict as that. We just want everyone to use common sense. It is a monster horror toy group. So if you're here to discuss monster toys or monster movies, monster stuff with an emphasis on the classic, then it's the place for you. And as long as everyone's doing that, I try to step back and just let people have fun. It's a well-behaved group, well-mannered, and if you have not joined it, join the Facebook Basement of Horror group. There should be a link in the description, and that runs all year round. And there are people in that group with much better collections than I'll ever have. So if you want to see some cool stuff, that's the place. You'll see them posting some cool stuff over the months. You'll see a lot of cool stuff, and you can post your own cool stuff. See, you can't come on this show and post your stuff and say, look, I got this. You can't. This is my show. But in the Facebook group, you can. You can get the spotlight and shine it on yourself and show your stuff. That is the end. Thank you very much. I appreciate every one of you. Thank you for watching. Until next time, the one who dies with the most toys is dead.